Good morning. So here we are, Friday morning talks at 10 a.m. I'm Elaine and welcome you to our session today on brushes. So I often get asked, which brushes do you have and which brushes should I purchase to paint with? So I thought I'd point out a couple things. First of all, watercolorists use mostly short-handled brushes, not long-handled brushes. Those tend to be for the acrylic and oil painters. Not that I've never tried a long-handled brush, but they're made for us in this type of painting. So I always start out recommending rounds and flats, and then a couple specialty brushes. So I'm going to start by showing you just some basic rounds that I recommend. So rounds have points on them, and flats obviously are flatter type brushes. There you go. And when I use a round, let's start with the rounds. This one is a size 12, and I like that because it holds enough paint and it blends well. So to get a fine line brush, I need a nice point, and I'm just going to, without any pressure, go across the page to get a straight line. If I push a little more pressure down, I get a little bit thicker line, and if I put all my pressure down, I get a thick line. So it's kind of fun to practice with it, and obviously if I use my number 6 brush versus my 12, I'll get finer lines and thinner lines. I'm going to rinse that off. And for really tiny detail, I often recommend a brush like this that has very few hairs, and it has usually a 3-aught. So somewhere on the brush it will show 3 zeros or a 3 hash 0, so you know, but it's tiny. So if you pick up the wrong one, as long as you think it makes. So this one makes a very fine line, and hopefully my hairs don't split when I'm doing it. So this one probably is still dry and doesn't have enough. Now sometimes on my rounds, the points of the brush need to be a little bit longer and stretched out, and you can see on this one it has like a little tail on the end of it. So when I hold that up, it gives me a really fine, nice line. And I do use different brushes painting, but sometimes if the points are good, I will just stick with that particular brush. Now, I always recommend a 6 or a 12, somewhere in that range for those brushes. Now, the other 2 brushes I recommend are what we call flats. And you can see they're flat, but the widths of the brushes are different. So I always recommend about a 1/2 inch. This one's a little bit longer, so sometimes I like them a little bit shorter. And this one's about a 3/4 to an inch. And what's nice about a flat is you can cover big surface area because it's a bigger brush. So if you decide you want to paint bigger, then you would get probably bigger brushes, like 2-inch brushes. But I like the control. So if I don't put any pressure down on the edge of the brush, I can also make a finer line. And sometimes we use the tip of the brush to do different things as well. Your half-inch brush is going to be very important also. I'll just quickly show you it's just a nice width, and you could do all the same things with the 1/2 inch as your 1-inch brush. And then to kind of show you just a couple specialty brushes right now, I like small fan brushes, and I prefer ones that have a harder bristle to it. The ones that are soft or like more brush hair or animal hair, I can't really use more than one stroke. So they're great for feathering or grass or different things. And I like different sizes. And of course in classes I always talk about what I can do. So let's say now I decided that I covered up an area that needs to be white. There's different lifting techniques or how to do that. So I have scrubber brushes, and I usually like these sizes. They're just great. Sometimes you can buy them in all different sizes and sets. And I'm just going to wet it, and it depends on your paper, but you need a paper towel for this. And obviously, if I didn't want it to spread beyond that spot, I would stay within that area. I have to keep adding and lifting. So there's still a little bit of a ghost of color. Now, if depending on your paper, this paper is Winsor Newton, it's handling pretty well. You can see the little pieces of the paper lifting, so you want to be careful about that. But you can see that I'm getting down to the white of the paper, so that's a really nice tool to have. And one that I didn't mention is a Dynasty black and gold brush that I love. I have about 5, 6 of these brushes. They only come in 6 sizes, and they don't really match. Like this is a number 4, and it's actually a pretty big round. It's the 311 series, and students always ask me about them. For a while we couldn't find them, but when it spreads, it just blends really nicely. So I use these a lot to blend areas. Now I can also do that if I have a pretty decent round brush. If you look at this, it also blends nicely. This one's a pretty nice brush, and it does it. It bounces back, which I really like in a brush. It goes back to the point, but if I need it to blend, it softens. And if you were working with a petal, that's what you would want. So thank you for joining me. Check in with me every Friday at 10 a.m. for a new product that I like, a technique that I teach, possibly a book share, and of course, if you have any questions, I'd like to see them in the chat room. And I hope this was helpful. I'm going to be sharing things that maybe aren't always taught in a class, or I never learned in a class and found very helpful. But please join me for my upcoming class. It's watercolors with only 6 colors, and you can find the link on this Facebook page. Just register with PayPal, and then you'll get your art supply list from me. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.